Welcome to another installment of the Optimal Being video blog presented by ConsciousLifeNews.com, your daily source for news and articles about conscious living on planet Earth. I'm your host, Jonathan Willbanks, and today I want to speak to you about emotional toxicity, and this is really a change of pace from a lot of the material that I've covered in the past, which has been more focused on physical toxicity from environmental pollutants, contaminants, from additives in our food supply, and how to mitigate your exposure to those. But I think equally important to not only our physical health, but also our mental and emotional health is our relationship to our emotions. And if those emotions are not properly expressed and processed and dealt with and learned from, that they can really become buried within the body, that we can end up carrying these repressed emotions around, which can really add a lot of weight and gravity to our experience of daily life. And I think that in particular in Western society, we are, and then there are other societies that have this issue as well, but in particular in our modern society, we are not trained socially in terms of how to have a healthy relationship with our emotions. We are told that there are acceptable ways to behave, acceptable ways to feel, and everything else is bad. And some of the most toxic emotions that we tend to repress, usually because we're judging ourselves when we experience them, so we don't allow ourselves to fully process them. Some of the most harmful emotions are going to be fear, anger, shame, blame, guilt. If these are not acknowledged and repressed for long enough, they can become so compressed that they end up becoming rage. If you're someone who has a really short temper and you find that you're fine most of the time, but then something can really set you off and you just go into Hulk rage mode, you have a really short fuse, then that's a really strong red flag that you've got some emotions that have accumulated that you need to deal with. And there's an analogy that I use for my for I think how a lot of people in the West deal with their emotions, and that's of a beach ball in the pool. So let's say we have the emotion of anger, and that anger is a beach ball. And we don't allow ourselves to deal with it in daily life, so it's like constantly trying to hold that beach ball underwater. And that takes a constant exertion of energy, of force, to keep that beach ball down. But it's always wanting to come up. It's always wanting to come up. So we're holding this beach ball underwater, and as we're walking around, we're constantly having to expend energy to keep ourselves from letting that beach ball come up and release. And then to carry that metaphor further, maybe we've got another beach ball that represents guilt that we feel about something that we've done in our lives or our relationships, whatever it may be. That's a second beach ball we're trying to hold underwater. Then you add shame, you add judgment, you add fear. Oh, fear is a big one. And so people are literally walking around and they can be quite a mess because they're trying to cram these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different emotional beach balls underwater, and all of them are wanting to come up. And over time, this can understandably have a very imbalancing effect on a lot of people, can throw a lot of people out of emotional balance. So the idea, and so one more point here, is that in particular in the sort of New Thought movement, this idea about the power of positive thinking. I'm a very firm believer in this. I believe that positive thinking, that our words, our thoughts, what we believe and tell ourselves about ourselves are very, very important, and that these positive mindsets can, in fact, transform the way that we experience life, and I think that they're very good. But I also want to caution people who are pursuing this sort of personal cultivation against, I think, a danger that comes with these ideas, is that we tend to judge ourselves even more harshly whenever a so-called negative emotion comes up. And we might be feeling anger about something that's going on in our lives. Maybe it's our job, maybe it's in our relationship. And instead of allowing ourselves to acknowledge that emotion and process it and release it, we say, no, I need to think positive. I need positive thoughts. Don't think that. Positive thoughts. I'm happy, joy. And again, happiness, joy, love, those are great thoughts. Those are great emotional states to inhabit, but not at the expense of repressing any other emotions that naturally arise over the course of your life. So the idea is, rather than repressing these emotions, is whenever they come up, if you're angry about something, making it okay to acknowledge your anger so that you can be fully in the moment experience that emotion and let it vent. Let go of the beach ball and let it go whoosh. And you might be really angry for 5 minutes, and that's okay because you're not judging that emotion. But if you make it okay to be angry and allow yourself to experience that emotional state, you will vent it very quickly. You will release it. If you make it not okay to be angry, then that emotion gets repressed, gets buried down deeper and deeper into the body. And over time, all of these emotions that we've shoved within ourselves can really get pent up. And I had a personal experience with this a few years ago where through a number this is a long story and I'll give you the highlights, but basically I was an emotional train wreck. I was stressed beyond measure. I gained about 100 pounds. I was depressed. I was irritable. I was angry and mean to a lot of the people in my life. I had more or less destroyed my adrenals and thyroid. I had cardiovascular problems. My skin looked terrible. Basically, every system in my body was shutting down. And and this is a story I can share another time, but in short, went through a shamanic energy healing process where I entered an altered state of consciousness. And within that state of consciousness, I somehow tapped into this pocket of repressed emotion that I had been carrying around. And this is a very profound experience because it was like striking oil, where, the geyser goes, psh, and in that process, I felt the energy of years of repressed emotions moving through me and venting. And I had no idea consciously what the thought process was or what the events were that were associated with these emotions because they'd been repressed so long ago. But I would find myself crying uncontrollably or maybe laughing or in some ways in pain because the intensity of this energetic and emotional release was so strong. And this went on for almost an hour. And I could feel, especially toward the end of that hour, that I was literally letting go of emotions that I had repressed from all the way back to early childhood. And within an hour of making it okay to vent and acknowledge and release those emotions, I felt 20 pounds lighter overnight. The difference that I felt in my daily life after that experience was profound. And in fact, that was actually a catalyst for a lot of the healing journey that I've been on up to this point. And there was a lot of debris that I was carrying around that really needed to move. And for me, that was the experience that did it. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone go out and find a shaman or use altered states of consciousness to do this, but I'm sharing this personal anecdote with you as an illustration of my own understanding and direct experience with how literal that repressing of emotions into the body can be. And I don't ask you to take my word for it, but I ask you to really maybe check in with yourself and ask yourself, what is my relationship with my emotions on a daily basis? Do I allow myself the time and the space to acknowledge what I'm feeling? Or do I have to shove it down and bury it in order to maintain a happy face? People who manage large groups of people or who have very front-facing, public-facing jobs, such as in customer service or sales, can really have a problem with this because the nature of their work means that they're not allowed to express the so-called negative emotions that they're experiencing, that they've got to constantly keep a happy face on. So if you're in one of those positions, it's very important at a minimum that at the end of the day, you allow yourself to do a review and say, what emotions came up in me throughout the day? And when you find them, say, oh, aha, there it is. And give yourself permission to really experience that and feel it without judgment. And in doing so, you can have this daily release, this daily detoxification, instead of having to carry it around with you in your daily life. And I'm going to go into more detail on this process of emotional detoxification in my next podcast. But the first thing, the goal of this podcast, this video blog, is just to illustrate the mechanism of what emotional toxicity is and how it can affect us in our daily life. I hope that this has provided a little bit of insight and clarity for some of you on this issue. This is, again, a different approach than I've taken with a lot of my videos in the past, so I would very much appreciate any feedback that you might have to share. As always, you can leave questions or comments below this YouTube video on YouTube or on the original article where it appears on consciouslifenews.com. I welcome any suggestions for future episodes of the series, and I also encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can get my latest video blogs delivered straight to your YouTube homepage each week. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, be well.